Hello and welcome, Richard Siddle from The Buyer. Thank you so much for joining us on Hospitality Talks.
Yeah, nice to be here. Thank you very much for inviting us.
Richard, I obviously know who you are, and we've had a brief chat previously, but could you just explain for anyone watching or listening who you are, who The Buyer, who is The Buyer, and what do you specialise in?
Okay, yeah, so I'm Richard Siddle, one of the co-founders of thebuyer.net, which is a business-to-business website aimed at the premium on-trades. So my background really actually is I'm more like a business journalist. So I've worked in 25, 30 years across different sectors, a lot in grocery, a lot in convenience, a lot of independent retail. And then the last 10 years or so I've been involved in, writing about the wine and drinks industry, primarily with The Buyer at the on-trade. So I suppose, the last month has been, a massive impact as well for the publishing industry, really, and how we've been able to respond to this and try and get as much information out as we can. So yeah, that's my background, I guess, in terms of what we try and do is supply information to the premium on-trade, that whole supply chain that keeps that going.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and so looking at the situation that we all find ourselves in now, what were the immediate effects? How quickly did things change, and how did they change?
Yeah, I mean, it's all very strange. I mean, I've literally just been writing something this morning, really reflecting on, we're getting close to a month, aren't we, really, since it's really hit everybody. I mean, I remember being in the trade, going out to wine tastings, going out to quite big wine events in the week of sort of March 8th, March 9th, that whole week, which is like business as usual. And then suddenly March the 16th, when Boris Johnson sort of announced the fact that pubs and bars, or advised people not to go to pubs and bars, I suppose that's really when it, the proverbial hit the fan. And I think from a journalist point of view, as I say, I see myself as more as a business journalist as opposed to being a drinks writer. I suppose that really kind of kicks in then into what is your role? What can we do as business journalists? And I suppose what we've been trying to do over the last few weeks is really give as much information as we can to the trade, but looking at all the information out there, siphoning through what's going to be relevant to our readers, and then trying to provide information in a way that's packaged and presented in a way that people can actually make sense of all this if we can. And of course, every day it's changed. So what we've done is created sort of a daily blog on the website. And we just literally just try and, as I say, siphon through the most important aspects, because it's completely ripped the carpet under everyone's feet, really, and it's impacting people in so many different ways that it's important, I think, for us in our role to try and give as much of information as we can, but to make sure it's relevant to our audience. Mm-hmm. And the impact there's been on that supply chain. So a lot of our suppliers, a lot of our core readers are wine distributors and wine importers, many of whom only rely on the on-trades, mm-hmm. as well as restaurants and bars losing all their business. They also lost all their business as well. So yeah. It's been a case of trying to provide a hub, I suppose, of information and content for those people. It's been massively challenging, but it's also been incredibly inspiring as well, I think. Every day, just countless stories of businesses doing just amazing things. Yeah. Not just to help themselves, but to help everybody in the trade. And I think it's been a really genuinely inspiring time, as well as it's been awful as well.
And that supply chain, what adaptations could they possibly make, or have they all mothballed businesses? How are they coping in the current situation?
Yeah, well, clearly there's quite a big, disparity, I suppose. There are those wine suppliers who are so focused on the on-trade, like literally 100%, that some have tried to change a little bit and gone direct to consumer where they can. For example, a company like Jascott's Wine, mainly in London. They amongst many others, lost all their business overnight. Mm. And I know that they've switched to direct to consumer, and they've got about a quarter of their sales back going that way.
Okay.
People like Bertman have set up, opened up their restaurant wine lists to sell direct, and you're seeing quite a lot of that happening amongst some of the bigger on-trade only suppliers. Mm-hmm. I think what's going to be interesting going forward is how that then balances out within the traditional channels. Mm-hmm. How there's been a bit of a murmur amongst some independent wine merchants about wines that were only meant only once in that channel and are now possibly being opened up to other people to buy. But I think everyone is having to change and adapt and find new ways to do business. And I think the most responsible people in the trade are those who recognise that and who understand that and see that as being part of the bigger picture, and not griping about the fact that a wine that used to be exclusive to them is no longer exclusive. I think the trade, that part of the trade, there are tensions there, and I think that will be interesting to see how that develops over the coming weeks. But it's been fascinating really to see how fast some of the bigger groups have moved and have been able to change their sales forces, change their way of working, and switch completely from restaurant focus to going direct to consumer. And I suppose longer term, you can look at it and say, is it wise for any supplier to be 100% focused on just one channel of the trade going forward? I think we're going to see a lot of companies really having to look at that. And I think there's once you could say the genie's out of the bottle to some extent, because now that companies have seen they've been able to build up new revenue streams, they've been able to be quite successful in serving their wines to private clients. Are they really going to give up that revenue streams when things go back to normal, or if whatever new normal is? So I think we're seeing some really interesting changes in the supply chain that I think are happening now, and I think some of them will actually have a long-term impact on the industry.
I think that's a really interesting point, is that we're seeing businesses adapt to the current situation, and the whole idea of, if you're going to try something new, trying it in this kind of a climate where consumers are maybe going to be a bit more forgiving if something screws up and isn't perfect the first time, but you can kind of trial and error new ways of doing business. Do you think then, knowing the supply chain as you do, knowing the people that are involved in it, and with your vast experience, do you think that some of these working practices will continue when we get out the other side of all this?
They'll have to, yeah. And I think actually what's going to happen is many of these companies, are going to come back not in the same situation as they were before. Obviously restaurants and bars and everyone, but if you're, we're seeing people learning new skills, so starting up e-commerce models from scratch, starting up learning the whole rules of going direct to consumer. And I think actually what that is doing is opening a lot of businesses' eyes to a different way of working, which they, in the past, they've been 100% reliant on just getting listings in wine bars and restaurants, and you're at the beck and call of sommeliers or a new on-trade buyer coming in. By creating a DTC model, you're then taking a bit more control of what you're doing. I mean, you can then, your margins are going to be different, the way you work, the way you operate. So yeah, I really do think this is going to fundamentally change a lot of the way that dedicated wine suppliers in particular work, and that they're going to have to be a lot more multi-channel. I mean, most of the companies they work are multi-channel. So it makes sense that they themselves need to be a lot more multi-channel and think about different ways of going forward. So although it's a really bad, horrible and disturbing and time for so many people, I think also this could also be seen in a couple of years' time as being a massive revolution in the industry, and how companies go forward in a more efficient, profitable and effective way, which is what the wine industry has been crying out for years. So so yeah, it's kind of a positive thing, I think, as well as being hard. So.
Anything that facilitates change and development and growth within an industry can seem quite scary, but also in the long run could perhaps change some of those ways of working that we know are outdated and that we know haven't really been working for a very long time.
Outdated aspect to it. I think the industry, the wine trade in particular, is very traditional. And sometimes it looks at change that's going on in other sectors, and it kind of thinks, well, and forever's giving out reasons why it can't change, and saying, oh, well, we're different, the wine trade is not the same as others, and you're thinking, well, no, you're not really. And I think this actually is a time when companies are going to be forced into making some really dramatic changes.
Yeah,
I think that actually a lot of them are going to be really quite genuinely pleased by what they see as alternative ways of working. And I think that's the opportunity that's there. And those who really go for it and really grasp this opportunity and see this as a as a way to be proactive and creative are going to really benefit. Those who kind of sulk and lick their wounds a little bit are going to be left behind. As hard as it sounds, that's the way it is. You know, from my own point of view, as a writer, as somebody who's covered lots of different sectors, you know, this is, you know, one of the most dynamic times, you know, I can think of. You know, every day you're seeing companies 10, 20 different initiatives every day, you know, which you may not see half of those in a year.
Yeah.
So it's incredible in times, you know. Yeah.
Brilliant. Lovely. Thank you so much for your time, Richard Siddle from The Buyer. I really appreciate you joining us for Hospitality Talks, and I look forward to catching up with you on the other side, maybe for a direct to consumer or even back to a restaurant glass of wine.
Good. And keep up all your good work as well. Okay.
Thanks so much, Richard. Take care.
Okay, cheers.